Okay, I will call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Wednesday, January 31st, 2024. And I'm saying that slowly, so our friends at TV 79, howdy friends, can help us get started. So this is another in the series of budget meetings we have scheduled for this week and next. Today we're going to cover our protective services. So this is going to be fire marshal, disaster prep, all three fire departments, EMS Post 53, the Fire Commission, and the Police Department. And since our good friends and colleagues from the Police Department are here today, we will start with police. Kate.
So I could run through some of the other departments, but do you want to go to the biggest issue first, the 53rd?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce all that, that's fine.
Okay, so that would be in patrol full-time. Last year, the request from the police department was for 2 new police officers. The approval was for a 52nd police officer to start in January of 2024. So you see 2 things in the patrol budget is the full year for that 52nd police officer. And then they requested the 53rd police officer this year. My proposal funds it beginning in January of 25.
Got it.
So.
And did the 52nd officer get hired?
We are not at 52 yet.
Okay. Well, but you're in process for hiring that person?
We were for about 10 minutes. And we had an officer that went to the police academy, and due to family issues and family business issues, she resigned very shortly thereafter. So we were at 52.
Okay.
You know, it might be more helpful if for the TV if you came up.
If you guys could come up and let's just talk about even the original rationale for going from 51 to 53, just in terms of your manpower needs, and I think it would help us and viewers to just talk through kind of both positions.
We weren't sure we were going to be sitting at the big kid table tonight.
There's always room.
So just again, we've talked about this in years past. It's been talked about for many years. But just a little back history here. In 1980, the department went from 48 officers to 50 officers. 1980. In 1980,
even before you started.
That was well before I was here. Yes, I was
before.
I was still in high school when they went to 50 officers. And then I don't know the exact date, but I'm thinking it's probably 87 or 88 is when we went to the 51st officer. So it's been a long time since we increased headcount of sworn officers. The department and expectation of services clearly has changed. In that time, you know, when I started in the dark ages, we had one officer that was the training officer and the youth officer. They wore both hats. That was one full-time person, right? We had a records sergeant. We didn't have an administrative lieutenant. We had a detective lieutenant and a detective sergeant. We have carved out, you know, spots over the course of my career without significantly adding to headcount, including the school resource officers, the traffic officers. So, you know, at this point, with the expansion of what is expected as far as the services of police officers and the requirements that we have to maintain, this 53rd officer really, what I envision is, we've talked about a narcotics officer for many, many years. Well, I'll be very blunt. We don't talk about narcotic investigations in too much detail, but it has certainly changed on the way that is done with the legalization of some substances. And obviously they're talking about making more substances legalized. So it's a different paradigm as far as narcotic investigation. But I would want this officer to have some aspect of that, but have the nimbleness to have this 53rd officer. We can put them in a spot where we need it. Now, historically, over the last 5 or 6 years, we haven't been at full strength simply because of attrition and long-term illnesses, and having this 53rd officer, I think, they can do a lot of different things, kind of akin to what we used to have was that we had a selective enforcement squad that had 3 officers in it. They kind of did what needed to be done. They assisted patrol when it needed to be assisted the detective division, did narcotics investigations, did traffic enforcement. That's kind of my envisionment for that 53rd officer at this point.
It's also true that you have a lot of administrative challenges and time sinks that you didn't have before. So around FOIA claims or requests with regard to police video, and there's other things that didn't exist even 5 years ago that are taking up your time.
I think last year for FOIA requests, I think we had at least 75 to 100 in 1 year time.
1 year, and you're seeing that pace or that trend continue.
And because of the way the FOI laws are crafted right now, we have to do a lot of things we don't have the ability to say no. Right?
For example,
We have an organization right now that makes a weekly request under FOI for all traffic collision reports. And because we hold it electronically, we have to give them those accident reports every week upon request. And the FOI does not allow us to hold those back.
so it's the reports and all the videos associated with
No,
it?
they're asking for the reports. They want, really what they're asking for is they want to find out who the people are that were involved in collisions, so I believe that they can solicit business.
Okay.
So that's a weekly FOI that we are working with the FOI Commission. The FOI Commission, our representative, our liaison, clearly says that the FOI has not kept pace with technology.
Okay.
Right? I know in the legislature they are working on potential ways to increase a revenue stream to actually get some revenue back for the time that it takes to do this. So the FOI, it runs the gamut. You know, it's a lot of these FOI requests are not from people that are even peripherally involved with the incident. It's because, you know, they want to see,
Well,
see what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. There was one recently, an incident where there was a child present, and we had to release the video, and it took hours just to redact one child in an hour-long video, but 4 different officers arrived at the scene, so 4 different body cams for an hour long. Somebody has to sit and hover over the child so you can't recognize who it
Identify,
is.
okay.
So just one with an hour body cam, because 4 officers were present, takes, hours of redacting. So, and that's just one, and we'll get multiple in a week.
Okay.
So just that takes,
And right now, it's kind of a
long time.
shared responsibility. The captain may do some, the administrative lieutenant may do some.
The IT professional does some.
The IT professional does some, so it's just, we get it done. But
Plus, it's not just that. You have more state and federal reporting that you had to do even 5 years ago. Is that true as well?
Yeah, every year there's something comes down the pipe for required state reporting. And, I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, and I said it time and time again, when Chief Anderson 1 was here from 1963 to 1993, I wish he was here now so I could ask him what he did all day. Because he didn't have to do, I know he didn't do any of the things that we have to do now. The chief of police basically said, these are the rules for the police department under town government, and that's the way it was. There was not all this mandated reporting that we had to report everything
Right.
to the state of Connecticut. Almost everything short of,
And not even the mandated reports annually to the state, but just our accreditation. We have to hit certain criteria and look them up and, print them out and send them off. Like that's included as well.
So not just part of getting accredited, but maintaining the
Right.
accreditation, you have to submit all that.
Right.
Okay.
Does any of this excessive work cause for overtime hours to accumulate on some of the other officers? Or you try to manage that?
we're always trying to
Sure, of
manage
course.
overtime, right? And as Jack knows, I'm a taxpayer too. I don't like spending any money that we don't have to spend, right? I think we do a pretty good job of trying to manage that the best we can.
So luckily, FOI request, as long as you respond within 4 days, they say you can get it out, in a timely fashion, which gives us a little time. We're not pressed to get it out that day. So if there are some longer ones, they may take a couple weeks to get.
We had an incident here back 4, 5, 6 years ago that involved one of our fairly prominent citizens that is on TV.
I remember that.
I got 46 FOI requests on that one incident, and no one would take a pool release. They wanted their own. So my computer was dinging so fast I couldn't keep up with, the response just saying I got your email, right?
Right.
So would you say that what I'm hearing is that it's not really, this isn't population driven, right? So we work, this board works and we hear a lot about the developments and the new residents.
Well, that
have
is,
moved
I
in.
mean, it is a part of it as well.
Big
Do
part
you-
of it.
So since SROs, right, we pulled 2 officers out of our patrol, they're only in the schools. Then we have a Marine division, that gets pulled every summer for 5 months. So they're out of patrol in the summer and we run short.
And how many officers is on,
There's
just on Marine?
2 officers a day on the Marine division, but then we have backup officers as well because those 2 can't run 7 days a week. So there's always people pulled out of our schedule. When we made the schedule originally, everyone, there was, I think, 4 patrol officers per shift. But now since we pulled the SROs and the Marine Division, traffic unit, it creates a shortage in patrol. So the FOI stuff is administrative duties, but then patrol with the added, EMS calls, since we're first responders, because of all these communities that have popped up and the medical.
The response to assisted living facilities here in Darien, you'd be quite surprised of how many there are. There's 700-800 a year between our 3 assisted living facilities.
Going back to the patrol and the SROs, when we staffed the second shift of dispatchers, the chief at the time said that by fully staffing that second shift, that would enable us to have the SRO at the middle school without impacting the department because you were taking officers out of the dispatch center. Was that not correct?
Well, we're still not to the point where we have 2 dispatchers on every shift.
I know that.
There's still an officer in there some of
Yes.
the time.
Because we're not.
Just midnights
Well,
or?
because we're not full staffed, if it runs short, we have to cover with an officer if a dispatcher doesn't take it. So
Okay.
we're still at that point right now.
Okay.
We've had, like I mentioned, we've had long-term illnesses when people were out for an extended period of time. We have other things that we never historically had either. We have 4 employees right now that have ongoing military obligations. So that's, 150 shifts a year probably that are not staffed because they are at their monthly training obligation and their 2 weeks in the summer. It's not always in the summer now, but that's 2 weeks. That's 4, and we never historically had that in my time until maybe, 10 or 12 or 15 years ago, really, that we had people that were in National Guard positions that were
It's
going.
probably after 9/11, I don't know.
No, we had them before that.
We had them, yeah, and they did get called into active duty for extended periods, but it wasn't,
As common?
well, 2 of our officers, they still had, they were both called back. They were done with their obligation for the weekend, a month, and 2 weeks in the summer, but they were called back. They still were in callback status. So we have that.
And one of our dispatchers.
The dispatcher
Yeah.
as well,
right.
yeah.
So you're aware of that when you hire, right? Obviously.
Yeah, and that is just part of the hiring. We can't say, we're not going to hire you because you have military obligations. That's
Right.
just something that comes part and parcel
Yeah.
with the employee. It's just from a perspective of backfilling those positions when they're not there. That's the only reason I bring that point up. We never had to backfill military leave obligations before. There are additional portals for getting time off that officers never had before. We've always had a contractual minimum, but there was a time in the early days of my career that we just tried to meet our contractual minimum. As long as we tried to meet the contractual minimum, we were compliant with the contract. But I worked with a sergeant on the desk and 2 officers on the road because we didn't order anybody back. Now, we order back to the minimum manpower. So,
Sarah, Mike, any questions on this topic? Jack?
I have one quick one. I know the fire department is doing special training because we have more high-rises Is there any additional training that the police department has to do because the facilities are somewhat different?
Not so much of the facilities are different, but just the expectations of what is now expected of modern-day policing here in 2024, right? There's a lot of things that we never did before that we do now. And a lot of things, the public sees here that we do, that a lot of police departments don't have the time to do, like being the mystery reader at Hindley School, or, running the RAD program, or running the Citizens Police Academy. If they have a police department that is running 911 call to 911 call, and everyone's short-staffed, every police, I don't think there's a police department in the state of Connecticut that is consistently at full staff. It's just because,
When you go to the, I'm looking here where you say at the 3 assisted living places, 944 times. How long is that? Like, is that an hour there? I mean, it seems like it's like a half a person. A half a man,
It's probably not an hour.
Uh-huh.
It depends on what the call is, right?
Right, it depends on what the call is. There may be 2 officers that go.
There's usually 2 officers dispatched.
And it's, I would say, an average of 20 minutes.
The only thing we do solo here in this town, officer-wise, is patrol solo. We don't go to virtually anything solo, because just what might happen. Even in an assisted living facility, you don't know what's going to happen, so that's 2 officers going to that. Those are a lot of calls. Allen O'Neill, Avalon, Town Hall Homes, other developments that we've, when Avalon, when it was the gravel pit, there was no calls for service in there, right? There was just a gravel pit. The only call for service we got in there was kids riding motorcycles, dirt bikes, and we had to shag them out of there. So it's exponentially
Right, but,
increased as
yeah.
far as,
Even the residents on Heights Road already, we've been to multiple calls there already.
some significant
yeah.
calls there as well.
Yeah.
And just assuming we get you to full dispatch, that doesn't change this request, correct?
No, I still think that we need the nimbleness of a 53rd officer. And I don't envision that this chief or any future chief would be coming back to this board. I don't think it will be 40 years, but it's not going to be, next year to come back to say we need additional headcount.
Yeah, just building on her question, where are we on civilian dispatch? You're authorized to hire all that you need. Do you
They
have
are.
all that you need on staff?
I believe we're working on number
8.
8 and 9 right now.
Okay.
Mhm.
Did you ever get to 9 and it just?
No.
No.
You were, okay.
But we have a new way of looking at this Kate's come up with.
Well, it must be
And
better,
well,
hopefully it's
Susan-
better than the old way.
Yes.
And
So-
the success of that project, of the dispatch project, and as this board knows, has been over 15 years in the making, but without getting to the point where it's a fully fleshed out, fully functional program. I was a lieutenant, and that was 3 chiefs ago that we've been trying to get this off the ground. I really thought that the demand for that job would be through the roof. I thought we were going to be able to cherry pick from the best dispatchers in Fairfield County that would want to come here. That hasn't been the case.
No, the 2 I met on my tour are very impressive. They know what they're doing, absolutely.
The bottom line for dispatch candidates for us, I believe, is they don't want to have to do the commute from wherever they live. Ridgefield, Bethel, Stratford, Oxford, right? Even though the town has a very competitive salary structure and benefits package here, I mean, I would put it up against any dispatch package anywhere in the state of Connecticut. I think a lot of it is the commute that they don't want to do.
Sarah?
So I appreciate the detail that you've provided. I think it's very logical and it makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you coming and giving the detail. So anytime you have any kind of budget or request, we always appreciate when you come. My only concern is, I think this is the only full-time position we're adding in this budget this year. Is that correct or no?
That's correct.
I support the January 1st, 2025, as was last year, and I know that we did that within the town budget last year with one of the departments of health, I think the sanitarian, is that
Mhm.
correct? And there was one other position I think we also did that with.
Well, we
ranger,
did that with the
or
police
whoever.
officer,
Right.
and we did it with a position that we have decided not to fill, so.
Okay. I would love to be looking at, I think there's at least one, if not 2 other full-time positions that were requested in the town hall departments that were looking for a full-time?
There was a request to combine what is
Right,
now
two
two
part-time.
part-timers into
Yep.
one full-time.
Okay, so that was the only one? I couldn't remember if there was one or two.
That was the only one.
The other one was
The
the
other one was-
part-time assistant EMD.
A part-time, yeah, part-time
Okay,
assistant.
that's right,
EMT.
okay. I would love to see some thought to seeing how we could take care of that, so that in the next year and a half, that is, I would love to be able to add, we were able to add last year also with police. I want to
Yeah.
make sure that we're paying, being thoughtful
Well-
about.
Yeah, so the thing with the two part-timers into one full-time, you would basically triple the cost of that position between the salary and the benefits. And I don't feel that I feel the position, we would benefit from it, but do we benefit to that extent? And I just don't see that.
Okay.
And the same, the assistant EMD, I don't think we're deficient with how we're operating now. We have a volunteer assistant EMD.
Right. No, and
You know.
I support that also. I just think I would love to see.
I would
moving
love to
forward.
be able to add all the requests that people
No,
do too.
and I can appreciate that,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And, this one was a struggle
No,
as well, but-
yeah.
And it's not one that we put forth lightly either, right? It's
No,
not like we
no,
just-
nor am I suggesting it is at all, yeah.
Here's the case where I think the residents and visitors to the town of Darien are, by and large, very happy with the services that the police department provide.
Until you take it down.
I think
Except for
the
that.
response time is good, I think, and my projection out is to try to maintain that level of service to even make it better.
Well, it is. It's definitely a struggle. I mean, your documentation is crystal, clear, which is why I don't really have a question. I do struggle with the notion of, in this environment with our budgets, adding an FTE. I mean, despite the fact that you're clearly making the case, but it wasn't an easy lift for you to ask. It's not an easy lift to consider.
I fully understand. We all open that tax bill when it comes on July 3rd, right? We all do.
So Kate, what's the number all in? Not just salary and benefits, but
If we were to go for the full year,
car,
well, car wouldn't be
uniforms,
as,
all of that.
car is not an additional.
Yeah, that
But
was
when you
another
add
question.
all the benefits in, uniforms, that kind of thing, 131,000.
That's for the full year cost?
That's a full year cost,
And so you've put in, so it's what, 60?
half that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it doesn't affect the fleet at all? You don't need another?
Pardon me?
It doesn't affect the fleet at all? No? Okay.
No, we're always in a very good spot with the fleet that we run. And again, we're always appreciative of the support for that, because those cars after 3 years are pretty much clapped out. We've never had a problem with our rolling stock, and we don't envision adding anything to the fleet, other than the motorcycle that we're adding back in that we had before. We just didn't have it for several years because we had no motorcycle operator to operate it. Because people-
So we're looking at 6 cars now in the capital budget. There won't be another one.
No, one
We
additional.
don't run one car per officer, we run the cars based on the number of patrols per shift, and they run 24/7.
And we haven't seen new police cars. We just got new police cars sitting in our parking lot yesterday. We haven't seen new police cars for over 2 years. And we had to get these from Pennsylvania because there are no
They were not
cars to
available.
buy
Oh,
in the
you
state
just
of
got them,
Connecticut.
that's
There
what-
Just
isn't
got them
any.
yesterday.
And they told us, some departments are contemplating going to Chevrolets, and we were told, you cannot get a Chevrolet. Forget about it. You're not getting it anytime soon, even if you wanted to change your fleet, which we don't.
Let's talk about the other parts of the police budget.
Okay, so we'll start up with admin. In the
That's
full-
why I gave you that one.
Give me the bigger type, thank you.
Just want to point out that in the full-time salary, we have built in a small amount for turnover, anticipating a retirement. Yours is off. Similarly, under conferences, I did make a reduction there, assuming that by the start of the next fiscal year, we will only have one officer going to the FBI annual conference. Ally is going to be attending the FBI Academy, but won't be at the conference at that point next year.
When will you be gone for that trip?
The end of
That
September
training?
until the beginning of December.
Okay.
So you'll see throughout holiday pay up a bit, and that's not just wages, that's also differing assumptions on how many people will take their holiday pay as pay versus taking it as comp time. Medical services down. Trying to think if we moved something out of there. We reduced cost for behavioral health. That's the reason for the reduction there. And let me go back up to the professional services there. Is that where? Yeah. This budget does not include any funding for promotional testing. At this point, we're not. We have valid tests through May of 25.
No, 24.
Pardon?
May of 24.
May of 24, sorry, May 20th of 24 is, I think, is the date.
May
Yeah.
20th, 22nd, something like that.
So the assumption is that any promotional things will happen before that time, or will be, the police commission will make the decision to fill the vacancies before that time. So we won't need to do a promotional exam in the next fiscal year. That could always change. But right now, we're going with, the request was for no funding for promotional exams. The uniform account does include the 53rd officer. And food and related, the prisoner meals is down. That is not my doing. That was the request, based on actual.
That hinges on the fact that the state of Connecticut really doesn't want to hold anybody pre-trial or pre-arraignment. So when we have a prisoner, we call the bail commissioner, and unless it's a dangerous criminal, they are going to release them, where we used to have to hold them over like a 3-day or holiday weekend. That's a rarity now that we hold anybody overnight anymore. So that's why we don't have to pay as much for food.
So Alan, Chief, this may throw you off a little bit, but we're going in alphabetical order. So animal control is the next one alphabetically. There's not much happening there. There's an increase in training. It is a high percentage increase, but that's mandated training for our animal control officer. Otherwise, the budget is pretty unremarkable. I think I did make, no, I didn't do, that was the request. After that, we would have communications. So the budget does assume that we will reach 9 dispatchers. We have several candidates close to hire right now. So hopefully by the time of the beginning of the new fiscal year, we will have 9 in place. You'll see shift differential.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What's the longest standing dispatcher that we have? How long have they been there?
Oh,
Is it
boy.
local?
4 years maybe?
It's got to be more than 4. Brian's been here a little while.
Because Della Carpini, he was our,
The first one lasted a year.
I
Then
might be
the
able to look it up.
second one was here for a couple of years.
maybe 5 or, I lose track of time, 5 or 6, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even if we get to full, we have pretty high turnover.
So the problem, we haven't had high turnover in the ones that we've hired and have been working for us. But we had trouble at first kind of getting off the ground, and we've had trouble with some of our candidates where they didn't make it through training. So that's one of the changes that Susan Barksdale made, was bringing in the critical, and I think that was Derek maybe too, Lieutenant Mulcahy, bringing in the critical test. So there's a written test, but then there's also this critical test where it's computerized, And it, to a certain extent, she's laughing because I took the test.
And you aced it.
You did?
I
Yeah,
did,
girl.
but it, it lays out for you some of the stresses of being in dispatch. And, I think I could tell you that would not be for me. And I know we had at least one candidate in this last go-around after taking the test say, whoa, that's just not for me. So, put some other conditions where you have to be able to record, be able to get the information that people are giving you quickly. So we think that that will help us weed out some of the people who would have trouble doing that, doing the job. Gives them a better understanding of it. So this is our first batch, I think, of candidates that have taken the test.
Sometimes it's not an easy job. And in many, if not most dispatch centers, the call taker and the dispatcher, it's two separate assignments. Our telecommunicators do both. In most dispatch centers, someone takes the call. All you do is talk on the phone and get the information. Then you hand it over to the dispatcher who actually talks on the radio and interfaces with the officers in the field. So,
And to answer your question, it's a little over 6 years, Ted thought.
6.
The shift differential will, assuming we get 9, we will have people on midnights, and there will be shift differential. We are seeing some of that now, I think.
We have one dispatcher on midnights now.
Yeah. But otherwise, the increases here are pretty nominal.
My favorite line item,
Pardon?
radios.
Radios.
I thought of you.
Yeah, we're never getting away from radios.
My favorite line item.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Fleet. There's not a lot of changes, except for the motorcycle lease. The cost has increased for that. And tires are up more than normal. But as I said with some of the other budgets, tires is a function of what you need to replace in any given year. And believe, if it ever comes up on the screen, the mechanic did delineate, what exactly they're buying. That was one of the things I picked on this year, is tell me what tires you're getting, so you can see what actually they're replacing.
You can't run patrol car tires down as like you would run on your personal car. They have to be ready to go on any kind of weather, so they have to get changed earlier than you might change them on your personal car.
Okay, investigative and youth expenses. We have moved some costs here from conferences to dues. So you'll see those changes. And another cost there is the fingerprint machine. That is under equipment rental? No? What do I have? I didn't say where it was.
Equipment
It's under,
lease.
equipment rental / lease.
Okay, right, so the cost of that from the state has increased.
You don't have an
That's
option
fine.
there. That's the
Yeah,
only
that's
way to
through the
submit
state.
fingerprints now.
It's on a state-provided
On
equipment.
their equipment. That's spec equipment. The day of inking fingerprints like I used to do is over.
You don't have to keep telling us how experienced you are.
I like to ink better, to be honest with you.
Okay, so the next one would be patrol, and that's where you're gonna see the 53rd officer. We did also in this account include some small amount, assuming that there would be some turnover. In part, I did reduce the amount of increase requested in the overtime salary. I believe we're taking a little bit of a risk, but I think it's a moderate risk, so
How much did you reduce it?
55. And obviously, it's still up significantly. Talked about holiday pay earlier. Motor fuel, the increase here is related to the, my note here says motor fuel is increased is to motor fuel. It's the boat. It's the marine fuel.
And oil, we had bought, we buy the two-stroke or the oil for the boat in bulk. We had extra 55-gallon drum, which we didn't need in previous year. Now it has to be replenished.
Okay.
So that will drop a little bit
Yes.
next.
Well, I don't know if we'll use the whole 55-gallon drum or not. You know, it depends on how much they
Activity
actually
happens out there.
And so the things like personal protection gear, the ballistic vests, that can be cyclical depending on how many officers' vests need to be replaced at any time, you know, what the end of life is.
And we budget for that at 100% of cost. We get reimbursed from the Ballistic Vest Partnership at 50%. So we budget 100%, we get back 50% of that, but that's not an ironclad guarantee that Congress will always reappropriate that funding.
And I think
Quick
it's
question.
actually less than 50% now. I think it's,
The vests that we're now buying, I know there was some discussion last year. Are these the vests that can stop a high-powered? They're not.
no.
That was a capital request last year.
Those are,
Okay, did we actually?
we
those?
have those.
Okay, that's all I wanted to double check.
Okay. Medical supplies is down, that was the request, not a change I made, but like we don't need any replacement Narcan in '25.
Right.
Professional standards, let's go there next. We are consolidating conferences into this budget. We'll say there is no one currently taking any college classes. That's still true?
Mhm.
Okay. So we don't have any tuition budgeted this year. There is an increased cost for the maintenance of firearms, which is the uptick you see in the special equipment repair.
And I would let's just point out that the fact that we don't have any officers taking college classes is not a reflection on they don't want to take college classes. It's a reflection on the quality of the education of your staff currently, that our staff has those degrees.
Excellent.
So
That's great.
Records, there's really not a lot there in records. Copy equipment, we talked about this the other night in our budget. There is a slight reduction based on the new rates for the copiers. And then the software cost there, that increase is from Axon. And if I'm correct, you said it was going to be stable for the next 5 years. We just signed a new
New
contract.
5-year contract.
Axon is the one that does the body cameras and all that.
and the in-car cameras
Yeah.
and the data storage. That's where the money is.
That's where the biggest money is, yeah.
I went the wrong line of work. I should have went into data storage.
School crossing guards, that's just the cost of the,
We're looking again for an potential outside vendor, but every time we get a solicitation for crossing guards, like a company that wants to come, the price is just astronomical.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
So it's unlikely that we'll ever be able to outsource that, even if we wanted to.
And then last is the station operation expense. It's generally stable. They are allowing for more overtime. You can see that in solid waste disposal. The service to come pick up their garbage has increased. Facility repair, there are certain things that they only have to do every other year, so that's why you see a reduction there. But then we get to equipment maintenance, same kind of thing. Increases because some things have to be done. This is their cycle to be done. And that's really what we have in, I will say the heating fuel number is up, but I looked at the historic data and I was comfortable with that number, that request.
So Kate, do we have, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
do we have one provider for heating oil?
Yes.
Supplier.
One
Yes.
supplier?
Yeah.
Are there any maintenance issues percolating that are getting worse
Ever
and that you guys are going to have to have
popular,
a kind of a capital increase to
Well, you might have heard
fix
we have
that?
we have a locker room project about to.
Yeah.
No, we got that covered.
Yeah, do you want to?
Well, there's going to be a couple things coming down the pike in the next few years. potential for the boilers and the hot water retention tanks. That's more of an Ed kind of question, but there is an end of life on those.
Okay.
And it's probably going to need a redesign because they built the building around these units, and there's no ingress to get the same size units in through the doors that are there. So
I love this, I
so
love
it may
this.
be, we may have to have a different design of hot water holding tanks. Don't quote me because I'm not an engineer, but I know there's an end of life on these, and we're 12 years into our building or 13 years into our building. So that might come down the pike.
And then the other thing is the fire pipes.
Yeah.
They
So
found bacteria in the pipes.
our fire suppression system, we had to get an emergency repair.
From a leak, I believe, right?
There's some kind of microbe that ate the metal and makes holes in that, so they had to come do a complete inspection of that. And that system usually is, it only floods when it activates, but there's air in there that's supposed to keep, apparently it's not working exactly as advertised, so that might need some work.
Are you glad you asked?
We're waiting, we're waiting for the results. They took a piece of the pipe and they're testing it, so we're waiting for those results, and then they're going to tell us what we need to do when we get them.
Not to be the bearer of bad news, but we probably need some kind of additional air conditioning system in the radio room. There is an air conditioning system in there. However, we get these alarms on a regular basis that it gets too hot in there.
I
So
believe,
Dave
yeah.
Sabini is trying to work on some kind of split unit in there. There's $5 million worth of equipment in there. We clearly have to invest in ensuring
Right,
that
they're
it
working
doesn't
with it.
overheat and the stuff doesn't fry out.
Sarah, all these radios you're buying, we ought to keep them cool.
Did you put anything in the out years?
Well, in your
the
HVAC
budget?
system.
I don't
Oh
see
my God.
anything
Um,
in here for that.
Yeah, I don't think.
No, that was this has happened in the last month.
Okay.
The air conditioning in the radio room.
Okay.
The radio replacement schedule, are 5 years out.
I'm sorry?
I'm looking at the radio replacement schedule. Not next year, but the following
The-
4 years.
The,
Radio replacement?
Portable
Okay.
and vehicle.
So-
For the following years. Not
Oh,
now, just
okay.
not now.
yes, so that's going to be, our portable radios, police radios, they're only good for so many years, so
Oh,
we
yeah.
cycle them out. There are years without it, which means we're good for those years, because
year
they're
looks
they're
good.
going to last. But then we'd have to cycle them out when they get a little old.
Yeah.
And the board does know, at least at the time that I've been doing the budget, and when we put things out in 6-year projection, there's sometimes that we push them out again, right?
I'm teasing about the radios. Because it seems to be, one year I was like, how many line items and how many budgets are we paying for radios? No, you guys need the radios.
Yeah,
We need you to have the radios.
Kate doesn't like me commenting on my longevity and seniority, but I was on a post one time without a radio, and they forgot me there, and I was there for 3.5 hours after I was supposed to have been picked up, and they didn't know I was there.
Oh, so the radio budgeting is trauma driven? For a budget.
I was new, and I just stood there until somebody came and got me, and somebody drove by and go, you were supposed to go home 2.5 hours ago.
Yeah, I've been here.
Nobody got me.
No cell phones.
Did you get overtime for that?
No.
Oh, come on.
No, that was probably a violation of something, but there was no overtime.
All right.
I think the claim has expired.
So, looking at the capital, we'll skip over small capital. Vehicle replacement, that's 5 marked vehicles. This is part of our regular cycle replacing. We did talk about the other night, in the current year, because they just got some new ones, we're getting 2 hand-me-downs on the town side, so that will help us with our fleet. There's an administrative police vehicle, also in the budget, an unmarked vehicle. I don't know how old the one it's replacing is.
Well, mine is probably 4 or 5 years old, and I got almost 80,000 on it. When that one gets replaced, it will be handed down to the administrative lieutenant or someone. So,
Right, and then admin vehicle, the older will get
The admin vehicles clearly
moved
last.
to the town.
They last longer.
They're not driving the little lady to church on Sunday, but they're not a patrol car either, so.
Yeah, the unmarked is the car, I think it's car 8 is up for the gray one that the supervisor drives.
Two AEDs, as we talked about before, the police are our first responders to medical emergencies, even before the post they go. It's important that they have up-to-date equipment for those responses, so that's 2 AEDs.
Are they in every vehicle?
Yeah.
And the boat, and in the building.
This is, what year? We're replacing 3 mobile data terminals. This is another thing that happens on a regular cycle. These are their mobile offices. Absolutely necessary equipment for the job. So that's 3 MDTs to be replaced this year.
And we're changing the spec of that as we go along. Now it's a tablet that the officer can take out with them to potentially take statements or take photographs. They can come out of the car where it used to be hardwired in there, right? Because of FOI and other privacy concerns, we don't want any officers using their own personal electronic devices to do any work. Certainly not take photographs because you're opening yourself up for discovery. So this serves 2 purposes. You can take these out of the car with you and you can.
They don't have to use their cell phones to take pictures.
Right. And we can actually use it with our new next-gen CAD system, with all the forms that we fill out, say with victims or on crime scenes. You can actually do it through the tablet now.
Next up is patrol rifles. This was a project we started last year. The goal is for every officer to be assigned a rifle so that we don't have any more situations where, at the end of your shift, you have to bring the rifle back. They will each be assigned a rifle, be responsible for it. So this is 3 rifles. And you can see it's a multi-year project.
Did they take them home every night?
No.
No.
They could, they typically don't,
Okay.
right? If they do, they have to certainly comply
Right,
with
sure.
all state statute. Same with your duty sidearm.
Can't
When you're in the
we-
military, it's yours. You're responsible for making sure that you have it, and that it works, and that it's ready to go, wherever that might be.
So rifles were done in 27?
27, 28.
Okay.
And I was, a few years off, and then eventually you are going to have to cycle through again to replace them, on a future date.
Rifles last a good bit of time. I think they're 10 or 12
Yeah,
years.
unless you change a platform, because quite conceivably that rifle will be assigned to an officer for their entire career.
Right.
Okay.
So, quick question. A number of years ago, we put in a really sophisticated electronic training system. Does that also churn rifles as well as?
It does.
Okay.
Next up is the pistols with optics. So we would be trading in the pistols, the handguns that the officers have now, for one that has the optic on it. And if you recall the incident in Bristol, the officer who killed the perpetrator, that's what he had. He had that ability. So they looked at it, and it is less expensive for us to basically trade in all the, what we have now and get the pistols with that red dot attached to it, rather than trying to retrofit. I think it's important to do. I think it's enhanced safety for the officers and our citizens. So.
This board knows full well that I want our officers to be the best trained and best equipped, to get the best outcomes, right? And in this case, purchasing new weapons with the system already installed is less expensive than trying to retrofit our existing weapon platform. And the fact here that we can trade in our existing weapons, and then we can leverage asset forfeiture money that was given to the Darien Police Department to fight crime and to perform police services in the amount of $20-something thousand. That's covering almost half of the expenditure here without taxpayer dollars. So,
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So that's not a federal or a state grant?
not a grant.
Money?
It's not a grant.
This is money seized from criminals.
Okay. All right.
Order to the good guys to perform police service and have competent public safety.
Okay.
It's been sitting in an account for something like this, when we want to leverage that money that was not taxpayer dollars for a good cause.
Then Sarah's favorite, the radios.
By the way, sir, OPEB is now ordering radios for their SSOs.
It's related.
Just in case you wanted to ask about it.
Yeah.
The last two both deal the 911 system. One is the battery backups. They are in need of replacement. They're at, and the batteries are at end of life. Clearly, we need to have batteries at work. And then our 911 recording system has been at end of life for a while, and right now it's just kind of rigged to run on Internet Explorer, even though Internet Explorer is no longer supported either. We need to replace it.
And what that does, if anybody doesn't know, it records all incoming phone calls, outgoing phone calls from the communications center, all radio transmissions, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That is required for accreditation. It's certainly best practice, any standard for a police department. You have to have data and to prove what somebody said or didn't say or did or didn't do. So we've had this existing system for probably 25 years, but maybe an upgrade here or upgrade there. It's no longer supported because of the platform. You know, Internet Explorer is now the way of the Edsel, I think.
Yeah. Sarah, would you feel better if we got you a radio?
She
Just a
knows,
ceremonial.
that's This is not a drug issue, not my circus, not my police. I'm gonna let you guys, I'll stay in my lane, you guys, you own yours.
Anything else on police?
I don't think, I'm sure there's some little bit of revenue, but
Yeah, we don't generate a lot of revenue.
they don't generate a lot of revenue.
It's okay, every little bit helps.
Unless they stop the data guys.
But then it has to go into a special fund. It's different.
Go sit on Hoyt Street for a little while, you might pick up some revenue.
State
A lot of people think that motor vehicle revenue doesn't come
come to us.
here.
So Chief, going back to the red dot thing, so you do get money from the state asset and the federal asset, but that's this money that you're talking about,
Yeah.
which has been recovered. Okay. Do you ever request that for other equipment?
We used asset forfeiture to get our first 9mm handguns. We had a $50,000+ drug seizure that was awarded to us, and that was paid in full when we changed from revolvers to the style of weapon that we carry now at no taxpayer expense back then.
Okay.
That's great.
Sometimes the criminals are not that smart, and we end up benefiting from it. Not often enough for me, but often enough that it makes it worthwhile.
Okay.
Thank you, friends. We appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thanks.
Good night.
I don't see any firemen here.
Neither do I.
Jack wore his red sweater because the fire department is coming.
But that makes it, I could have worn blue.
You should wear blue, yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Good
No,
night.
thank you.
Thanks,
If
Chief.
I just may say one final parting shot here is that
I'm in town of Darien.
the last couple, 3 or 4 years of the budget process with Katie Jen have been largely bug-free.
Good.
I like it that way, right? No surprises, and try to make it as smooth as we can.
They do a great job.
They certainly
They
do.
do a phenomenal
Appreciate it.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Quickly, before we move on, can each of you check which town network you're connected to? I was emailing with George and asking him if there's anything we can do on our side to improve how quickly OpenGov loads. And that was his first question, is which network people are on.
Town of Darien. Town Public.
I'm on Town Public.
Okay, Town Public is the slower one.
Right, but we don't have logins for the town of Darien. We
And-
have been given those logins, so that's.
That's
Actually-
something we can do, but
Oh.
I don't
I think
think it's actually
you're-
making a difference.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
See if you're on the list, try logging into the town network with your.
It should be
with
your
Darien- Your
email.
email and whatever password you use to get
Oh,
into
geez.
it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I gotta dig that up. Been on this one for 5 years, so yeah, no.
okay. All right, so next we have all the rest of the public. So I'm going to just keep going alphabetically.
Okay?
So Darien, fire, and where the rest of my notes? One thing I wanted to say before going into all the fire departments. I tried to maintain some level of equity between the 3 departments when I'm reviewing their budgets. And, a few years back, I was just like, well, the busier one, how much are we doing per call for each department? And realizing there are built-in things, it doesn't matter how many calls you go to. If you have a fire department, you have to have a firehouse, you have to have fire trucks. There's going to be certain expenses that you can't tie to call volume. So I looked at the rate of increase in each department, as well as the dollar increase, and understanding that their budgets are not even. I also considered the level of detail that they provided, which in some instances could give you more comfort that the request was well thought out. So, with that in mind, Darien had the largest requested increase of the 3 departments. It does have the smallest budget of the 3 departments. So one of the things I was looking to do there was bring their request more in line on a percentage and dollar basis with the other 2, but also recognizing that their budget is the smallest one.
Yeah, it was only like $10,000, right?
The increase is $10,000, and that's a 6% increase, but I cut,
You cut a lot.
yeah. So first line training, they do have an increase there. I do support this. They're looking to bring in some rescue classes. They've got some donated equipment, and they're looking for some motor vehicle rescue classes, like shoring up, should there be a tractor trailer accident, how to do the shoring for that to bring it upright again. So I thought that was important. Professional services, snow removal, unchanged. Equipment repair, that's one that I reduced the rate of increase, cut the rate of increase in half. There's a large part of this, $30,000, that there's really not sufficient backup for me to, be comfortable. So I did bring that down. Same thing with facility repair maintenance. Large part of that budget, undefined, and they put in a number saying they were increased, just adjusting for rising costs. But when you see the other budgets, there was significantly more detail. So it was hard to justify even the increase that I did approve, considering the lack of detail. Potable water, that was reduced based on historic actuals. Life and AD&D, you'll see across all 3, they each asked for 2,060, but the premiums are only 1,601, so I reduced each. And then operating supplies, again, I reduced the rate of increase because the number was just, it's high, even as approved, it's still up 23%. So,
Hey, Kate, I got a question.
Yep.
Grants, what is that? That's an expense?
well, we used to do their budget, I don't know how long, 5, 7, 8 years ago?
6 or 7 probably?
6 or 7 years ago. So we changed the way, their budget used to be much more grant and less detailed expenses. And in an attempt to try and get control over what the town was actually paying for, making sure that we were paying for the things necessary for firefighting and not for social aspects of, we started paying more bills directly, reducing the grant amount. So we did at that time, I think the first year, everybody got a $5,000 unrestricted grant, and then a couple years later, we increased it to $10,000. They can use it as they wish. It's a flat check.
Okay.
I think some of them, might use it for things like, after training, providing a meal.
Yeah, I
or-
saw that on
Yeah.
the weekend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are the training services among the 3 departments, are they streamlined? Is there an economy to having them all done together as opposed to separately? Or how does that actually work?
Well, so you'll see when you get to the fire commission budget that they're running certain training. So a number of years ago, they run the firefighter 1 class for all 3. So they pay for it out of the fire commission, which is the one that you need to be able to go in and be an interior firefighter. They're also, the commission wants to run classes next year for elevator rescues, especially considering the number of elevators we now have, not just in private homes, but with the redevelopments, and for bailout training. Bailout would be in a taller building if they have to jump. They have bailout gear that will help them lower to the ground safely. But they need to train on that on a regular basis. So the fire commission is doing those kind of things. The individual departments might do things that are more specific, like maybe they have a number of people who want to take firefighter 2, or because 2 of them do more work on the highways than the other, they might want to do more specific work for, like Darien has indicated, they want to do how to upright a large tractor trailer. That's a very specific skill set. So, Noroton may not need that because they don't respond to the highway as a first due, but Darien does. So each department has some specific classes that they'll run themselves.
Do they, especially with uprighting the equipment, if I'm not mistaken, do they do that with Stanford and Norwalk? Because I believe they have the equipment to do that.
We also have,
You do not?
at least at the Heights, I know they have specific equipment to do that.
Okay.
The struts and stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we had it one time.
Okay. Emergency management. So last year, we had funded a position that was to be a full-time emergency management director / fire administrator. It doesn't appear that that is going to come to fruition. So we're going back to the full-time salary represents half of the salary for the emergency management director. The other half is in the fire marshal's office. He did request a paid assistant. I took it out. I didn't think we could justify the expense based on the amount of time that we actually need it. I think we should look for perhaps another, we did at one time have a police officer who acted as the assistant. I think we should look for something like that. Somebody who's already on staff, maybe it's another one of the fire marshals, to take on some of the duties when we have an emergency and need it. But we do also have a volunteer assistant emergency management director.
Kate, associated with that, I believe it was 2 years ago, we set up a FEMA fund to help certain residents if they wanted to apply for assistance on raising their home and that.
Yes.
Have we run the course on that, and is there still money there that we can return?
That's a long story.
It's,
Sorry.
Well, we've hired, the
We
the
hired-
COG and the town have hired consultants that specialize in this to help those
Yeah.
guys navigate that. Applications have been submitted. I'm even in contact with one resident about that. The question, there is literally a mountain of money at FEMA for stuff like this. The problem is the pace with which they're approving these applications and all of that. And so a lot of times when people check in with those folks to see the status of all
So we
that,
still need it?
we're waiting.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that you can do all the paperwork, but then it's like the lottery, you have to be selected. So,
yes.
yeah.
Then we did all the paperwork once, and none of them they were approved at the state level,
When they didn't
But
take
not at the federal level.
Yeah.
So we actually just, this month, submitted, again, there was, money became available, and so we submitted again.
Okay,
How
so the
many of
money's
them?
still needed.
Pardon?
How many?
One acquisition and I think 3 elevations.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the money's still needed, so it's
Yes.
not there, that's fine. Just wanted to double check.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. A lot of those homeowners are kind of in limbo while all that's being decided.
Fully understand.
And we are empathetic, but we're doing everything we can. Ultimately, it's the feds.
But just setting that up was empathetic to help people out.
Okay, the other increases here are conferences. It's a minor dollar amount, percentage-wise, it seems high, but as for the emergency management director to attend a conference. And software maintenance and support, he reported that the increases are pretty much across the board for all the software he uses, except for Code Red. Each of the rest of them had increases. And the electricity, that is based on actuals. That's for the Tower Drive radio site. And looking at the actuals, I felt the increase was reasonable. He did not have any, oh, I'll do capital at the end. EMS should be next. So we have professional services. That is our payment to SEMS for the paramedics. So remember, we guarantee Stanford EMS that they will receive a certain amount of income from the services provided to the town. And we pick up what they cannot collect through insurance reimbursements. So Jen analyzes it, and this is the estimate based on what we've been seeing, what we expect that we will owe next year.
What
As,
are your-
our share of it.
What are your trends in collection rates? Is that stable or?
We don't know.
We don't.
Um,
Or
Well,
do we?
Well, we have, since the last year, we were talking about this, and we were seeing a decrease in collections. It has picked back up. It is, it's jumpy from month to month, but I think it's just the nature of who uses the service, whether they're Medicare or fully insured or self-pay. Those all have different collection abilities. But I think we're doing good. The most recent quarter, we only had to send $10,000 over to SEMS.
okay.
So we had a very high collections quarter. The quarter before that, I think we sent 28,000. So we're trending pretty good in the current fiscal year.
Is there any way that some of the ARPA money that we've put to help people out can be used to help people out on the collection rate? Just a thought, I don't even know if it's possible, but just a thought.
I would say no, because we're doing our ARPA under government services, and that wouldn't be a typical government service that we would do, so I would be uncomfortable with it in that category.
Yeah, plus the fact that last year, people were paying, then all of a sudden this year, those folks didn't have to pay, and then the next year, well, folks last year didn't have to pay, but now we're being asked to pay, and I don't know.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, so the other thing that is in here is part of the CMed cost. This is our assessment for CMed and the dispatch for the EMS. And then in the fire commission budget, we'll see the dispatch for fire. So we'll do fire commission next. So the first line you're going to see in this is the training, and you'll see they've detailed what they plan to do, the elevator classes. So $11,000 for firefighter 1, $1,500 for one elevator class, $3,100 for another elevator class. Electric vehicle emergency course, you know, you may be aware that electrical vehicle fires are much more difficult to put out. So as they become more prominent, it's more important. And they were telling us about one of the new developments where the chargers were installed in a location that is rather inaccessible. And it will make things challenging. They've had to work very hard on how they're going to address, should there be an electrical fire. In that
charging station.
Yeah. And then the 3-day, 3-department 2-day bailout training class was the last one.
I didn't realize that but makes sense as far as inaccessible conditions for those.
Yeah, 'cause
Should that be something we would be addressing going forward with maybe planning and zoning to
I-
have
The
those things?
rules have changed on location of those facilities, so we should not have a problem with that going forward.
So in other words, it was a problem in the past and shouldn't be a problem going forward, but is it,
Well,
in the new developments,
well,
is it a problem?
in one.
In one, yeah.
Okay. So also here now, under professional services, big increase there. And what this is about, it's the very last line item under there, $20,000 for turnout gear and apparatus technical decontamination. So the state passed a law saying basically you have to, they commissioned a group to put together the rules for this things. It's that the PFAS?
PFAS, PFAS. Yeah.
So basically what they're saying is that, you know, you have to decontaminate the gear on a regular basis. And it is a long process, and I think they even say, let's see, this is to hire a vendor to remove the smoke, soot, debris from the apparatus and turnout gear which pose deadly carcinogenic threats. And I think we'll see in their capital, one of the things they've requested is to have kind of like standby gear, because this decontamination process is not quick. It's not an overnight, so you would need to have gear on standby. But this is something we have to do.
But you only do to equipment that's been exposed to smoke.
I have to, let's see, where did I save it? There's, part of it has to happen twice a year. Okay, PPE should undergo advanced cleaning at a minimum of every 6 months or as soon as possible after clothing has been subject to contamination.
So if it hasn't been used at all, you still
Have to do it?
You still have to do it?
That's how I'm reading it.
Yeah.
It says it should undergo advanced cleaning at a minimum of every 6 months. So that is how I am reading it.
Could that be because the gear is stored next to each other and then cross-contamination
I
is in theory could occur?
don't know.
Well, it solves the problem of organization and tracking
Right,
and which
exactly.
ones.
But they
were
also
there,
have-
because if
so-
I just cleaned it
Exactly
all.
what it
Do
does.
everywhere.
The hoods they wear, the hood should be washed after every fire or emergency service use. So that's in every time. So it's 8 pages of rules.
Well, I mean, I understand that, you know, if you're responding to a scene where there are hazardous chemicals involved, or asbestos, or something like that, and sometimes when a house is on fire, you don't know what
You don't
the
know
heck
what's
is in
in it.
that smoke, so I get that, but I mean, I don't see where it should be both. It's like, you do it as soon as practicable
But at
after
a
the
minimum.
event.
Yeah, but they're saying at a minimum.
That just makes no
State
sense.
mandates.
Okay. And then they'll need, and this process takes a couple of days to,
Yes,
so they'll need
so we'll-
substitute.
Yes, so we'll get there with capital. The other increases they're looking at replacing the iPads and the mounts in the apparatus. And the little black box won't go away. Then the emergency communications, that is the CMed dispatch for the fire departments, is up about 4%. Noroton Fire, Fire Marshal, sorry. Fire Marshal's, I'd say generally a status quo budget, there's no change in head count. There are increased costs for the training, they're required to, it's not a large increase, but they're required to have a certain number of continuing education every year in order to maintain their certification. Dues is up a bit. There's a long list of organizations that they belong to. Equipment, no, that's not what I wanted. Their code book costs have increased, and then the last one, small tools, basically more than doubling the budget. They are buying they have to replace their multi-gas meters and CO detectors. So you'll see that this year, and then it will go back down to normal next year.
This was also, Bobby used to do small items like that through small capital, and we moved it into operating because it didn't really rise to our capital threshold.
They still have in capital that small amount that we give.
The fire marshal
The fire
does
marshal
not.
doesn't.
Yeah, but the fire department,
Yep.
same amount.
Yeah, they do.
End of the
Yeah.
year, we wipe it out.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, Noroton Fire Department.
Hey, Kate,
Yeah.
on hydrants.
Oh, sorry. We
Yeah.
haven't gotten the letter yet from Aquarian saying what the proposed rate for next year is.
Was that a multi-year contract, or?
Oh, no, it's not a
an
contract.
annual?
This
So
is.
it's annual on
It's an
usage?
annual fee. They, it's
So
a
expensive.
basically per day, per unit fee. And Aquarian typically sends us a letter around now saying what the estimated cost for the next year is. We haven't gotten that.
Okay, so does that stay kind of in that range?
Depends on if we've increased the number of hydrants and what kind of rate increase they've been granted. So,
To have the hydrants, it's not to use the water that's in the hydrant?
correct. It's to have the hydrants and the water guaranteed to be flowing to it.
Wow.
Good racket.
Yeah, it's a good racket.
We give them a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
$500,000?
So Board of Finance should have that number, right, or our team
I would
should have
expect
that
so,
number?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'd be shocked if we don't have it by then. So Noroton Fire Department had a more moderate increase. And they generally provided good detail to support the requests.
Can I just call that out? That I think they did an excellent job, and I think that it is very helpful that the narrative was very helpful for me, and I think it'll be, the RTM, Public Health and Safety, they look at all of these. So I think it would be a really terrific thing if the other houses took a look at this
Yeah.
and adopted it.
I think the Heights did a, are you talking about commentary or the actual detail?
No, I'm talking about the narrative. The Heights did okay.
Yeah.
Noroton did excellent.
Yeah.
And Darien has room to improve.
Well, and it's, one of the things with, these are volunteers putting this work in, and you get a variety of skill sets and a variety of attention to detail. And I would love it if someday they all picked a person who was going to be their budget person long-term. Because you might have somebody who's great on the fire ground as a chief, but is not an administrative person. And it can show. And, every single thing that Darien asked for might have been really valid, but it's kind of hard to tell because they didn't provide the level of detail.
Yeah, it is.
So,
They really need the people who design their fire engines, where they go down to the number of screws and what type of screws they want, to do the budgets.
I just think this one is very,
yeah, it was,
very good.
it was well supported with detail.
Well, the other thing is you look at their write-up and it has good detail, but it's not so complicated that every department can't do this, right? It really is a little time and effort, not massive amounts of effort.
Yeah.
You can have a quality write-up that explains all this stuff. So
Yeah.
to the extent budgets have been cut for lack of clarity around why that increase was requested, that should be a message that
This will help.
this
for
will
sure.
help, absolutely.
But, and I gotta say, that's this year. That's who we have as chief this year. And I can think back a few years ago when you had a chief in this department who didn't provide the same,
Good point.
Um,
That's a good point. And they're
it's-
volunteers, so
yeah.
we understand that.
But I do appreciate the work that they put in, because it made life a lot easier to look at things and say, okay, that's justified. So, increase in professional services, this is basically paying for their accounting. Equipment repair and maintenance, you can see they're very detailed about what exactly they're doing, the pieces of equipment they're doing it on. And I really couldn't argue with any of that. Same thing, facility repair maintenance, they're telling you there's quite a bit of detail. One thing I did ask them was making sure that the landscaping was strictly at the firehouse, not on the property they own on near water. Going down in electricity, going down in sewer use charges, same thing, life in AD&D. Motor fuel, that is driven by the boat, the marine.
This boat takes a lot of motor fuel.
Yeah. And then again, marine gear and supplies is up a bit.
Well, there's two boats, right?
No. Well, there's,
Boat,
yes,
you
no.
divide it
Fire.
by different department on?
no, Noroton's the only one with the boat.
Right.
Well, there are
That's
two
what I'm
boats.
saying.
There
There's
are
a
two
police
boats.
boat and
That's
there's
what I'm
a
saying.
The police boat, yes.
It's not the same boat. That's what I was
No.
just saying.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a police boat and a
Okay,
fire boat.
okay, got
And
it.
then they do have the sea legs, which is kind
Right.
of a boat. But this is the actual
Yeah,
fire
there's two
boat
boats, yeah,
that's
okay.
docked at Great
That's what I was
Island.
like, whoa.
Well, there are two that are docked there.
But one's
One is.
going away.
One is on its way. It was replaced with a new one, but the old one is still there.
Just for information, I've requested, they're going to do a presentation, because I think what they raised and what they put together is rather significant, to explain what they did, how they interact with the other communities, and do that as a presentation to the RTM, hopefully in April, so people are more aware. I know Jim did something on it, but this is another way to have everybody understand what they've been doing there.
And they raised the money for the boat.
Yes,
We don't pay for it.
plus.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it there. And then the last one would be the Heights, and then we'll go on to capital. So the Heights had a very moderate increase request. And I think I only cut a couple things. Office supplies, they had requested money to replace computers. I checked with IT because IT had told us they were replacing the computers at the fire departments. So they are indeed replacing the ones at the Heights. So they'd asked for $3,800 for the 3 computers plus cameras and mics. So they cut the $3,300 cost of the computers. The money for the cameras and mics is still in there. Cut the life and AD&D. Heating fuel, that's going up a bit, but looking at their actuals, I believe that was a reasonable request. Air cylinders, they report that this is a bubble year. They are replacing more than normal this year, and it'll go back down next year. Then you see like tires, as we've talked about before, it's all a function of how many, what needs replacement this year. So that can bump up and down. But they were very detailed, well, you have to be able to expand it, but the detail, like the uniforms, they're replacing 15 uniforms at $450 each. So they provide good detail supporting the requests.
On heating, the other 2 are flat, and they're up 50%.
I didn't ask them why, but I looked at their history, and I think that they're right to be asking for the more money. And I will say on Noroton's, they kind of did a combination estimate because they are in the process of converting to natural gas.
Right.
So that one is a bit of a swag.
Got it.
Hopefully that's going to be less expensive. I mean,
Well, that was the reason for
that was the
doing
whole
it.
point.
Yeah.
That's been like 2 years, 3 years in the making.
It's been multiple years in the making, and we looked at it, a couple times to make sure it was still made sense to do. So, I want to pull up, so you got Darien, okay. So Darien, they're asking for heating and piping replacement. And just coincidentally, this week, I got recommendations from our insurance carrier for boilers. And it was for the fire station. Their boiler, well, the existing low water fuel cutoff is a residential model and does not have the code required manual reset. They recommend installing a commercial model low water fuel. So I do think it needs to be done. I think they need to do the work. I mean, it's obviously a bigger project than just that, but.
Excuse me. For the boiler replacement?
It's HVAC, heating and piping.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's redoing the whole unit.
it's redoing the whole unit.
So,
This was done a few years ago where we went in together with them on replacing it. It's at the end of its useful life. They're having to repair it quite a bit, so.
Is this the one converting to natural gas?
No, this is Darien. They're already on natural gas.
does this not need to be done in tandem with a boiler replacement? And when you,
No, I'm just commenting that I also got
no, I
this.
understand that, but in the plan, it's money for the heating and piping, and then the boiler replacement is not in the.
No,
books for 2 more
it's
years.
parts to the boiler. It's not the boiler that needs to be replaced. It's a piece of the boiler. I don't understand all this stuff, but it does. It's not the whole boiler.
But they're going to do that, and all that equipment can be used again when they
Hope so,
replace
yeah.
the boiler.
Yeah. replacing of,
Or something.
oh, thermal imaging cameras. This is to replace, read? Okay. I have got my pages out of, okay, there we go. 3 cameras and chargers. And I think thermal imaging cameras are an important piece of safety equipment for the firefighters. So I do believe that we should fund that.
Because we have them and they're in disrepair. This is replacement of current. Is it end of useful life? Are they actually not working? Is it?
You know, I'm gonna have to go back and ask that again because I don't. Where do I have my notes? I don't think I asked them that, and I don't see it on their list, so I will go back.
How does that work? It's not like drones, they're actually physical
The
cameras?
thermal, yeah, so it's a handheld piece of equipment, and it's a heat seeking.
Okay,
So you would use it to see, like you think you've knocked the fire down. You can use it to see that there's fire in the walls.
Okay.
You can use it to see people giving off a heat signal.
Okay.
So it really is something that gets used quite a bit in firefighting. So I'll come back to you on that. Nozzle replacement for $10,000. These nozzles are at the end of their useful life. So they're looking to replace them and choosing nozzles that are the same as other nozzles they already have on other equipment so that training will be consistent. And then large diameter hose, again, near the end of its useful life, and sections are failing, so they need to replace it. That is one I did not ask Brian. I did ask it of Noroton Heights because they have a similar request. But if we need to look for something to cut, we can find out if they need to replace all of it or if they can stage it.
Yeah, you cut half of that there, right?
Right, I cut in the Heights budget, I cut that in half, but that only after talking to the chief. And he said that yes, we could do it in 2 sections.
Kate, then the nozzle replacements, are those, every house can use the same, right?
Well, theoretically, yes. I don't know if every house has the same, but they're replacing, what they want to do when replacing it is buy more of the same that they have already.
Right,
So it sounds like right now they have 2 different kinds
okay.
in their own firehouse.
In their own, okay. And then you chose not to do ventilation fans?
Yeah. So ventilation fans, I don't know if I have it right up here. That's for, like in a big house fire, pushing the smoke out. And they have some now. They wanted to get additional ones and bigger ones to move the smoke out faster. But I thought the other ones, the other equipment was more about the firefighting and safety. That if we were going to cut anything, that would be the one that we can cut.
Yeah.
Having experienced it when somebody did not open up the flue in the house when they started their fire in my house,
It's bad.
they worked real well.
I just,
CO2 too.
I would just say,
Yeah.
I went to a number of the fires, and I think for residents, that's actually probably very helpful to them, not just to the firefighters, but for smoke damage. So,
Problem is, they can't stay. They belong to the police department, the fire department. You can't leave them with residents for days.
so this is not for long-term, this is just for the
It would
fire.
move, well, the point, you can't stay. It would move the smoke out faster, so the amount of time it would have to be there would be lessened.
They don't leave them with the residents. It's like maybe an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
But
No,
it's not.
I'm thinking smoke damage, but, look at it
Well,
extra.
I would support it, but.
My theory was that it was not about the safety of the firefighters. Your point is good, that it's also about
The residents.
the
Minimize-
residents.
Loss
minimize-
mitigation.
So,
Okay.
Yes.
you know,
They
there's
have
lots of
stuff
trading that
now?
can go on, there's things, other things we can do, that could be something, you know, maybe we would look at spending ARPA money on. But I felt so many of these capital projects were
Right.
legit, and some things had to,
Wait.
yeah, yeah.
So, just to go back on that, because I'm going to talk a lot about ARPA. If we know that what the actual cost is on this, and we know it's going to be done within a 6-month period, which really then spends the money so we're not giving anything back, are there ones in here that we could use so that we actually know what the real cost is before December?
So I started going through things that I included in the budget
Yeah.
that, and looking at which capital projects would I say, okay, if you have to cut capital projects, these would be the ones I'd look at. And then within that, I also identified ones that I thought would be good candidates for funding through ARPA, because they could be easily spent, you know, easily allocated to a vendor and spent in the right time frame.
Right, I mean.
So you can also do that with the ones that I already cut and take a look and say,
But even the front loader you had mentioned the other day. So, I mean, I'm really looking at, and I spoke to Jim yesterday, that even something, while we all approved the bonding for Hanson Road, Hanson will be done by September or sometime. So if we know that, we could possibly use that for ARPA funds, and then some of the other things that are sitting in ARPA, we could subsequently bond later when we have a better number on it.
No.
Just- No.
No, because we've already begun spending on them, and we didn't have a resolution saying intention to bond at the start of the project. So we can't go back and retroactively bond what we've
Yeah.
already spent without having had a bond
No, I'm talking
resolution at
about
that
the
time.
ones that we haven't spent certain money on, because there are some that don't have anything encumbered on
Not that really would be bondable, though.
it. Okay.
No, but it does maybe suggest something interesting, that if you were to take all the ARPA money where we haven't started to spend, right, or we've got it allocated and the project hasn't really gotten started, you could actually go in and say, given that this is a high-pressure budget year, there's a lot of capital up there that we're not going to bond, right, that we're just going to,
well, I wouldn't bond.
but you wouldn't bond, right? Well, one way you could approach it for all that small stuff is let's just take every last bit of ARPA money that's not allocated or that we feel needs to be reallocated, and cover all of the smaller capital items in the fiscal '25, all of them.
Yeah.
And spend it all now.
I don't think it's as much money as you think.
Well, let's sit down and talk about it, but even
Yeah.
if it's,
Yeah, we
you
should.
know, $500,000, that, I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to help.
Okay. I've identified about 360 that I think we could, and that's not looking at taking out the rest of the essential needs, which we know at a certain point this year, we're going to have to say that's it on the essential need money. Because if we're going to put it to someplace we can use, we're going to have to cut it off. So, yeah, I think we can get up, maybe
I'll
not
tell you
to.
what, so Jack and I we've talked, let's just take a fresh look at that ARPA schedule and say, what could we free up?
Yep,
And
yep.
then for this stuff that they're reasonably not going to bond, let's see how much of that we could cover this year. If we've got budget, we've
Quite
got that
honestly,
much pressure.
Even since there's a growing discussion of whether or not we should continue to bond based upon the, I'm going to say, 3 main projects that we have on the books, which is Ox Ridge, HHR, and Great Island. There are some things that in the past we have bonded that maybe if we can use the ARPA money to go and pay for it instead of authorizing a bond,
Mhm,
it's a worthwhile conversation.
mhm.
It's not the total answer, but it's part of the answer.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
let's
how many
look-
categories would be kind of combined to do that?
Well, that's what we try to
Yeah.
answer with this fresh
I'm
look.
curious, yeah.
All right, because Kate's identified stuff that's what I would call low-hanging fruit that
Mhm.
you would easily do
Mhm.
that are not controversial. There's a lot of stuff that's allocated in there where we've not spent the money that maybe would be more controversial to change, but in a tight budget year, maybe that's something we should
I'd be
just put on the
curious. I know
table
it
and
was
say,
very
here's the
thoughtfully
easy
done."
stuff, here's the stuff that would be more difficult to change, right? And I get that that's difficult, but it helps us solve a difficult budget year.
I understand, I know it was carefully
Yeah, I-
thought out,
I
It was,
agree,
but
yeah.
there's some things that we are not going to be able to do. There's some things we are not spending as much as we anticipated. And we only have so much time.
So we'll get back to you, let's
Yeah,
just put all
I'd
on the
be
table. and
curious.
take a
Yeah,
look.
we'll take another
It's
look.
not to try and move money over as a shell game, it's that we have a limited time, and so rather than giving $1 back, I'd rather that we.
Let's get it all out the door now.
And it
when
has
the
to be
time
by
that
the
we
end
need
of
it.
next year?
It has
But
to
that's
be
what we have
allocated by the end of this year,
year.
so we have to have.
By the
like-
end
And
of
spent by the end of
December
20.
31.
Right, got it.
2024.
But it's, when we say allocated, it's not just saying, here's how we're going to spend it.
It has to
It's,
be obligated.
Right, got it. No, I
you gotta
understand.
have the vendor
Yeah.
in the contract.
Right, but if, again, if it comes in less than what we needed on that contract,
That's
that
it.
money gets returned, which is a concern, so.
Well, that's why, if you could get it all spent this year, we're guaranteed
Yeah.
to spend
Right,
money. So
right.
even though some of the reallocations might be painful, it's not to say we wouldn't spend the money on that.
Well, that's,
We'd
I think,
figure
my
out some
point,
other way
like,
to do that.
what would
Um,
be pushed aside?
So that's why
Yeah.
part of this is using money we're clearly not going to spend on those things. The other big part of it is, let's replace this with town funding and use ARPA money to clean up these other things. In other words, it's balloon squeezing.
Yeah.
But the advantage of doing that
As long as we're not
ensures that
popping
we...
balloons.
Well, that's at the end of our deliberations, there will be balloon popping.
Oh, yes, I'm.
But it ensures that we've spent all the ARPA money, we don't have to worry about some of it not being spent.
Right.
Okay, what's next?
Okay. You're up?
Yep. Fire commission.
Fire commission, okay, so fire commission.
We're in the RFC, NRE.
Yes, we
All
are.
the supporting documents,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so they have two things in their plan. One is a fire truck, $1 million. And I'm making the assumption that, yes, we will go forward with it, but it would be bonded. The other thing is the rotation gear. So to our discussion about the gear having to be cleaned and it taking, let's see, I think they say it in here. What some places have done is, like, basically bought a second set of gear for everyone. What our fire departments or our fire commission is proposing is to buy 30 sets of gear that would be rotational gear. They did it based on 10 sets per department. And that was based on the number of basically active people at a scene or at each department. So this $106,000 would buy 10 sets of gear in a variety of sizes. And when a department has a fire where the gear needs to go out right away to be cleaned, they get replacement gear, temporary replacement gear from this from this stash. So it's a lot of money, and you could look at, maybe reducing the number of sets they buy this year and pushing, some off to buy next year, or just reducing the number. But I think it was a good way to approach it, rather than buying everybody a second set of gear, in particular knowing that some people don't go to as many calls. I think they took a good approach.
Is there a way to look at the math in terms of like risk assessment in a typical year? It's X amount of calls, so we're talking about how many uniforms in each of those places would be going, through. Is there a way to better predict that the
Yeah,
turnout
how
ratio?
many- Yeah, how many would be at a fire that would need to be cleaned?
Right, I mean, there is a history.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'd have to account for, we have some additional structures,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but there ought to be a way to have a good prediction, and maybe that takes us to the same number. But it is such a big number, I'd like to know that we've, really assessed it properly,
It's a good idea.
or sufficiently, I should say.
Is the gear solely, so like, that it's Noroton gear, Noroton Heights gear, Darien gear?
So now, guess if they have now gone to all wearing the same gear.
So if you have.
So what they would be buying is just a standard black firefighter turnout gear and no,
So that in theory, if you put 10 in each fire department, and you're not having all fire departments go there, you have 30 gear that could be allocated as needed
Yes.
amongst the fire
Yes.
departments for any of those things.
yes.
Yeah, it's available for all three of that.
Yeah,
Where are
so-
they being stored?
Pardon?
My question is, where are they putting this? Where are the 30 sets of gear going to be
10
stored?
sets per department.
Well, they don't
Right,
say
but-
where it's going to be stored, but.
Well, so
I'm
that's
sure
a
they
concern.
have the capacity to store it at the firehouses.
Yeah, they say
That's not
10.
an issue.
Yeah, they say 10
They-
sets per.
They based it on 10 sets per department.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not 30 to be held by the fire commission, it's 10 sets for each department. So, and they should
Right,
have sufficient
so,
storage.
Theoretically, if each department is storing, 10
That-
each.
that-
and,
Yes, I
Noroton
thought it
needs
was
20.
30 that the commission was going to hold. Okay, got it.
No, they're going to buy 30, but.
Understood.
I would
They say-
imagine the fire commissioner's gonna have to come up with a schedule too, because if they have to be done every 6 months, or within a 6 month.
But those are more predictable. I think this is
Right,
for.
this is for the
You go to a
unpredictable.
fire and
Yeah.
we've got to send a whole bunch of suits out at once
Got it.
Be cleaned.
to be cleaned. But like I said, I think, we can do another look at the math. Is 10 the right number? They
Are there
based
30
it,
people in a fire?
they based it on the number of as they put it, the active guys at each department.
Yeah.
Which raised other questions for me, if
Hmm.
we only have 10 active guys at each department.
Yeah,
So
but
Kate-
you end up with 30 sets in total, because that can be moved around in theory.
Right. But if we can get information from them on,
How many?
at your typical call, how many firefighters you actually have? And what if they tell us at every call, we only have 15 firefighters on average at every call? So then do you need 30?
Oh.
Well, they say 10 sets per department is adequate to make sure we maintain manpower for at least 2 crews. So it's 2 crews.
Of 15.
Well, that's based on, I think, on how many people you put on a truck and how many people you need to actually respond to a fire and send somebody in. Because, you can't go to a fire with only 3 guys and send anybody in,
Right.
So, I'll ask a few more questions on that. Fire marshal would be next. He has 2 smaller requests. One is to convert the current pickup, that's the deputy fire marshal's vehicle. It's a pickup with a cab on the back, and all the equipment is stored in the back. And the way they store his equipment in it now is very heavy. They want to convert the back of the truck to a utility style, and it will lighten the load on the truck and extend the useful life of the vehicle. They're estimating that it will extend the life of the vehicle another 5 years.
Yeah, it lightens it up considerably to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
How old is that?
How old is the car? 2016, so it's already 7 years old. The other one they have is to replace their fire inspection software. The current provider has sold the company, and they're going to have to go to a new platform at a higher cost. if they stay with that company or switch to another type of software. So they did some research, and rather than staying with this new company, they're talking about going to, what's the name of it? First Due is the name of the software, and it's used by our surrounding towns, and they feel it's much better for them than what they even have now. So we do have to make a change, and I think they're smart to go to this other company. Okay, Noroton. You'll see both Noroton and Noroton Heights are looking for upgrades or a new exhaust mitigation system. This is to remove the vehicle exhaust from the firehouse. They both have a thing right now called no smoke. Yeah, no smoke devices. They don't work well. And it does become a safety issue.
They don't work well now for some reason, or they never really worked
They
well?
never really worked well. So they're each proposing the same thing, to go to a whole house system for the exhaust removal.
Just so I understand the process, why would the vehicle need to be turned on when it's inside of the firehouse?
It's pulling
It's
the
gotta
exhaust
get
out
out.
of the firehouse with the vehicle inside, so if they pulled it in, you close the garage doors,
But
they're
why
still
is
gonna
this-
be.
But Marcy's
Even if you
question is
shut-
legit.
Why is the vehicle still running and on? Why wouldn't you just shut it off as
Well,
soon
you
as
shut it off, even if you close it, there's still gonna be residual smoke in there.
It's that
Yeah.
intense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe they tried it this way and to save a big expense and
Plus-
redoing it, now it's really not working and they need the bigger fix.
Well, that is what they're saying.
Okay.
And it's also, so there's an NFPA fire standard, and just keeping the bay doors open is not sufficient under that fire standard. So you'll see, if you read through all the capital project, you will see the same exact language in both of the requests. Radios. This is for Noroton, this is year 5 of their replacement. So we will get a break for a few years on the radios.
For Noroton.
For Noroton, yeah.
Just for Noroton.
Just for
Can we
Noroton.
schedule a year that's radio-free just for
No.
Sarah?
Replace,
Selectmen's office.
I don't think it's possible. There's too many budgets that there's radios
I
in.
think we all need to request them for ourselves.
okay. They've asked to replace their building generator. So it was a diesel. They had to take out their diesel tank. It's, for one, the generator's 50 years old.
Is that the thing in the back parking lot?
It's sitting on top of a platform. They've got a temporary tank right now, which really is not compliant with regulations. So they would be looking to get a generator that runs off the natural gas that is being installed there.
Ouch.
Yeah.
What kind of a generator for $75,000?
That's
a
about
big
right for a
But
whole-
generator.
it's to
It's a
run.
whole station generator, and if it's off
Yeah.
a gas line, they can run it as long as they've got gas
Yeah.
pressure.
And there is a gas line there?
They're putting, the gas line is going in, they're converting the building, the heat to natural gas.
Okay.
So
They're
they'd
the
lay
last
it-
one. So
Because it's on the
Breaker.
post road, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
This will include the gas line
yeah.
to get out to that, so you'll have a gas-fired generator.
We couldn't hook the gas line up when we did the others because they had paved the post road, and we had to wait a certain amount of time after the road was paved before we were allowed to dig it up again.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Is that with them? Oh, there, yeah. Okay, that was it for them. So Noroton Heights, you got radios.
We did count one year. A lot of radios.
They are in the last year of
Wait,
their,
Kate,
sorry.
Sorry, going back, so this generator bid is November 14th? Is that,
So they had gotten some quotes, well, that's a quote, it's not a bid. So
I'm
it would
sorry.
still have to go out to bid.
yeah, I'm sorry, estimate,
Yeah, it would still have to go out to bid.
okay.
And, you can always, try and make some kind of deal with them. We provide you this generator and, in certain storm events, we can use your building. I've long felt that, when we are doing improvements to these buildings that we don't own, I mean, they house our equipment, but we don't own the buildings. I think the selectmen should work it. Well, work some kind of deal, even if it's a case of, should you ever cease to operate as a fire department, we have first right of refusal on the building. Or things like, the Heights actually has become one of our polling stations. I don't think Noroton could do that because their open space is on an upper level, but maybe there's some other public purpose it could serve.
Well, and given the money that we were putting in for the retaining wall and the park there, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, we have the same right of first refusal for anyone who has open space. If you get that, like the golf courses and things like that, when you get that certain designation, similar to why we got Farms, because we had the right of first refusal.
Yeah. Okay, so they're replacing 6 SCBA. This is the last year of their 5-year replacement cycle. And then you see their exhaust filtration for $72,000. The cost is based on the number of bays they have plus installation costs. And then the last one is the hose, which, as I said, I did speak to the chief to see could we split it into 2 halves, and he did say yes, they could. And that is all of that.
Where is the capital for fixing that wall at Noroton Heights?
We don't have, that has not been requested at this time.
I thought that was
I
in
thought that was an
the budget.
urgent.
No, it's
No.
it's ARPA, I believe it.
No, it's not in
It's not
ARPA either.
ARPA.
No, we did a special appropriation for the design portion, and
Yeah.
that's as far as it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has it been put out for design or not?
We haven't, but the number's gonna be big.
I thought that was more urgent. or-
It is
Yeah.
urgent, but,
That's just
Can I-
quick.
Who's running this? Noroton Heights?
Noroton Heights. Speaking of that, just want to point out, if you look out 26, 27, they would like to look at a live-in facility.
How many of the facilities have live-in facilities?
They each have some
not
form of a
worded
bunk
correctly, but you
room, but
understand.
not a real live-in facility.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
Kate, where is,
build a whole firehouse for
where is Noroton on buying that house?
We bought it.
They did buy it.
yeah.
Okay.
What house?
Right behind the
Oh,
firehouse.
I didn't know.
No, it's on
No,
the post road.
It's if you're facing the fire department, it's to the left of that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they got a mortgage on
Kind of between the gas station
it.
and
the
I
new
think the
building.
tile place.
Across the street from it?
No, it's on the
No,
same
here's-
side as the firehouse.
It's
Okay.
Firehouse, Dickinson Road.
Right.
The new building, the building they bought, and then the tile place, and then the gas station.
What are they
There's
using
one.
it for?
It's going to be a
It's
live-in.
quarters.
They're going to give basically low rent to members in exchange for service. Other volunteer departments have done that kind of thing, and it works. It can help keep membership, it can help have people around to be able to respond quickly, especially at nighttime. And if you have, what Noroton was looking at is young people, young members who can't afford to live in Darien on their own, and for whatever reason are no longer living at home, maybe mom and dad moved away, and they were starting to lose those members, so.
Are they putting multiple apartments?
Well, I'm sorry, like living as in full-time living, like apartment living?
Yeah, apartment living.
sounds like-
A room, it'd be a
Okay, that's different from bunk rooms. This is.
Yeah.
Totally
This is
different.
living,
They're
yeah.
buying it.
Yeah.
They're buying it.
Got it.
And I think what Noroton Heights is looking to do a couple years down the road is something different.
Well, it's the
It'd be
same
construction,
concept, but
but the
it's
same
actually
concept, yeah.
in the firehouse as opposed to buying real estate.
Well, if they don't rent it all out, maybe they can help out some of the police dispatchers.
Well, the police dispatchers could also be volunteer firefighters, and then that would work,
And then we'd still have to come.
yeah.
So Kate, I think it was in the fire commission, I saw they had a line item, $3,000 for advertising for members.
For members, yes.
Is that the first time
No.
you've done that?
No,
So, okay,
they do it on a regular basis.
okay.
They try and recruit. Yeah.
And was it Bobby Bush that had a heads up on increasing head count next year?
The original plan would call for a fourth full-time, sorry. We have, so it would be we have 4 fire marshals now, Bobby and 3 deputies. It would call for another full-time deputy
Next year.
next year. Originally, it would have, I think it looked like it was going to be this year, but the pace of the development has not gone as quickly as we thought.
Okay.
What else?
I'm tired. I want to go home.
Okay.
That's
We'll
what it
adjourn
was.
in the next couple hours. Is I'll be adjourning by myself. Okay. All right, tomorrow we have, what's on our list for?
We don't.
Or, no,
Tomorrow we
sorry.
have nothing.
I was wondering.
Sorry, no meeting tomorrow.
Mr. Zagotsky? No, we don't,
No, we don't.
actually.
Next meeting is Monday at our regular time. That'll be a regular Board of Select meeting with the agenda and other things we'll consider. We have budgets as something we could discuss at that meeting. I think there's an appetite to try to get through that and maybe not have the Wednesday meeting.
Tuesday or Wednesday, yeah.
Or give one or both if we can. But let's take a look. Have we been through all the budgets now? Now this
Yes.
is deliberations?
Yes.
So we've got some research to do. You're going to spend some time on that.
Yep, I've got some questions to get answered.
Try to get that tomorrow. And then if we can, to take a look at both the answers to those questions, and then maybe Monday, if we've got time, let's go through the list that you've kept that are existing cuts. If you guys have got things that you think we should consider cutting or restoring, definitely look through the budget, give that some thought, and be ready to discuss that on Monday.
Yeah.
And then we'll go through the answers to the questions that you'll hopefully have by then, and hopefully that'll clarify things. If we're good Monday and there's nothing else, in other words, the research is done and your questions are answered, I mean, we'd be prepared to vote then, but we can go to Tuesday and continue the discussion. Comments or questions? Mr. Davis, you're looking skeptical.
No, thinking how.
He's tired.
Yeah, based upon all the budget meetings I've been to. That just kind of means.
This is
No,
this is your time,
Yes,
Jack.
this
This
is
is
your
your
thing,
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, wonderful.
Your hair's getting darker, actually, just sitting in budget. Not gray.
I have not had a kitchen for 4 months because everything that could go wrong with the reconstruction, including the county's property.
We should, hang on, we should
Yeah,
adjourn.
no, wait,
Right,
okay, I
let's
have
go.
one last question.
Please.
I have one last question. On the fire marshal revenue, I forgot to ask this earlier, but that's down significantly. It's down like 30%, and yet we're still looking for more manpower there, so,
Well, there's not, so you can't tie the inspections to, that's not a fee-based.
okay. Yeah,
So they
that's what
get
I
fees for
wanted.
site plan review.
Okay.
And, the original applications. They get fees for like the blasting permits, but for going to inspect the thing that's driven it up is all the multifamily dwellings that have to be inspected every year. And there's no fee associated with that.
Right. But
This is like the building permit drop-off. This would be correlated with that.
Yes.
So you get,
Yes.
yeah, and
But
there's a
it-
big drop in that.
yeah, but it's lower than it's been in the last like 5 years.
Right, but remember, they're also kind of a leading indicator.
Yeah, that's.
When it comes to the
yeah,
fees.
that's what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like planning and fire marshal are before the building permit revenue would
Yeah.
come in.
I mean, even back in, like, 2020 was, like 140, and now we're estimating 100 even.
But we're not seeing the redevelopment, if some of the other parcels that are up for sale and rumored to be planned for redevelopment actually happen, you'll
But
see
even if those get
fees come in for
consummated,
those.
they're not
but-
going to happen in the next fiscal year in terms of
Yeah.
the fees they would generate.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that wasn't.
An error?
An error, because
Yeah,
it's.
good question.
But isn't that consistent with what some of the conversation that you guys have had, and I know our committee's had, is that the growth of the grand list, the increase in the revenue on investments, the increase on revenue on building permits and other things like that, was going to go away at some time.
Mhm.
And as such, relying on them on a consistent basis, it was, there's going to be
You
a
can't.
time where we're going to have a gap should investment income go for 3 million down to 1. And even if the budgets are the same, that's a $2 million hole that we have to fill.
Mhm.
Yeah, on the other hand, all those developments get their final COI or COIO, and then they start generating tax revenue.
Yeah, no,
At
I
that higher
fully
level,
agree
so
that
it's,
we'll have that.
and that's long-term, so
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
Well, I always look at revenue,
Mhm.
because I think positive. In 2020, it was 143, then it was 146, then it was 120, then it was 130, and now this year we're budgeting 100. So,
But remember, the bulk of our redevelopment,
It's done.
it's not done, but it's past
The
those
fire stuff,
stages
yeah.
Where
where
it would
he's
generate those
generating
fees.
revenue.
okay,
It's just like planning is no longer generating revenue from all those
right,
things.
okay, I had to ask.
Other questions? Motion to adjourn. Mike's moved, Sarah second, all in favor? Thank you.